Welcome to EPG Pathshala. This module title, as you know, is about the emergence of the sub-regions and how the emergence of the sub-regions is impacting on the national integration or how they are causing national disintegration. And in this module, we are going to discuss about what do you mean by region, what do you mean by sub-region, and also the factors which have led to the rise of sub-regions in India. And we would argue that that after independence there has been a process of reorganization of the states on the linguistic basis, and it was thought that the reorganization of the states on linguistic basis, cultural basis, tribal basis would put an end to the rise of regionalism in India. It would allow the emergence of a homogeneous, social, cohesive regional states in India. But this has not happened. In fact, even after the reorganization of the states, even after India having 29 constituent states, even now there are many areas in India from where the demand for the smaller states are coming up. In fact, it's not that only the states are getting that very clear-cut shaped identity. States are emerging as political units. Within the states also we have sub-regions which are emerging in a big way. So states, on the one hand, states are quite homogeneous on a linguistic basis, but the other factors are coming into play. And there you can see that we have the movement taking place in Bundelkhand, which straddle the boundary of both Uttar Pradesh as well as Madhya Pradesh. We have also demand coming from Bundelkhand, Gorkha land in the state of West Bengal. We also have a problem of this demand for a separate state of Bodoland in the state of Assam. We also have the demand for the creation of Vidarbha. So lots of demands are coming up. Harit Pradesh from Uttar Pradesh, then you have Maru Pradesh from Rajasthan. So there are so many sub-regions within the state from where the demand for a separate statehood is coming up. And this is just a signifier of the dissatisfaction among the people of India. You know that the people belonging to the different states, on the one hand, they are closely identifying themselves with the states, but unfortunately what has happened is that within the states, some regions have developed more, other regions have not developed more. And then because of the electoral democracy, those regions, for example, the hilly region like say the erstwhile Uttarakhand area of Uttar Pradesh, now Uttarakhand is a separate state. Uttarakhand, because it would be having a small population, so lesser number of MLA and all, it would be feeling politically neglected. So political neglect and the economic deprivation, it produced a sense of, and it is producing a sense of, you can say, a kind of discrimination. And this perceived notion of discrimination or neglect by the stronger sub-region within the state, it is giving a demand for the creation of one's own state, a demand for a territorial homeland, like one can refer to the case of, like say, Punjabi Suba movement. That was basically the demand for the territorial homeland for the Punjabi people. But on the other hand, the earlier demands, how would we, in this module we discuss about that how we can compare the demands which were coming up earlier and the demands coming up now. So demands in the 50s or even during the colonial period, the demands were more on the linguistic basis, on the cultural basis. But now the demands are coming up on the basis of greater development, better administrative governance, or it's coming on the demand for better democracy or greater democracy. So development, democracy, administrative convenience, all these factors are now becoming more and more important. So linguistic differences, the emergence of the dialect communities, the cultural differences, or the historical past, like some part of a state would be coming from a former princely state, and those princely states might not have been very fairly developed or something. So obviously, like Chhattisgarh in the erstwhile Madhya Pradesh, it was underdeveloped because Chhattisgarh was essentially, it comprised of the former princely states, and the area was very poor and very backward. So basically, the historical past as well as the post-colonial mode of governance in which the political class has always patronized, has always helped those regions from where the political power has emerged. One can give the example of Punjab. Like Punjab has Malwa, Majha and Doaba, but because Malwa has maximum number of assembly seats, so most of the developmental projects benefits have gone to Malwa. So there is this kind of politics, like selective patronage to a particular region, gives rise to the feeling of alienation, feeling of deprivation, and this kind of feeling of neglect invariably leads to the demand for a creation of a new state. The objective of the module is to make students familiar with the promotion of sub-regional integration and also what have been the factors which have led to disintegration and how sub-regionalism has come in the way of national integration. In this module, we would refer to socio-economic disparities between various regions within the states. There are disparities between different areas or sub-regions within the states also. So it's not that the disparities are only across the states or interstate disparity. We also have intra-state disparities. Even within the states which are overall well developed, there are pockets which are extremely backward. For example, the state of Andhra Pradesh comprises of 3 sub-regions: Coastal Andhra, Telangana and Rayalaseema. While the former is very well developed, of course Telangana has now become the separate state. When it was part of Andhra Pradesh, you could see that the coastal Andhra was much more developed than the erstwhile Telangana sub-region of Andhra Pradesh and Rayalaseema region. So even now you can say that Rayalaseema region is far more developed than coastal Andhra region is far more developed than Rayalaseema. So this one can also refer to, say, Maharashtra, where the coastal Maharashtra is much more developed than Vidarbha and other regions. Even in Uttar Pradesh, like now when the Uttarakhand has become separate state, when it was part of Uttar Pradesh, it was much more underdeveloped than other sub-regions of Uttar Pradesh. So what are the factors which are responsible for the backwardness of sub-regions within a state in comparison to other sub-regions? One can refer to scarcity of water and other natural resources, topography, lack of irrigation, lack of basic infrastructural facilities, lack of industrialization, neglect by elites, historical factors like policies of past rulers, and so on. All these factors play an important role to cause backwardness. In spite of various packages announced for backward regions and other efforts by the state government as well as a number of centrally sponsored programs like Tribal Development Program, Hill Area Development Program, Western Ghat Development Program, Drought Prone Area Program and Desert Development Program, among others. Some areas have still remained backward. So there have been attempts, but these attempts have not been so successful that sub-regional disparity, interstate as well as intra-state disparities could be wiped out. Even the private investments have been biased in more developed areas where there exist basic institutional facilities. So let's have a close look at the economic disparities within some of the states in India. In his paper by Amresh Dubey, when he discusses the intra-regional disparities in the states of Gujarat, Haryana, Kerala, and Orissa and Punjab, Dubey compares per capita total expenditure of various districts or cluster of the districts in these states. He informs that the highest level of PCTE in Gujarat is in Ahmedabad, and it is about 2.2 times higher than the figure estimated by Banaskantha district. In case of Haryana, the mean per capita expenditure ranges from rupees 423 in Rewari to rupees 632 in Faridabad, whereas the incidence of poverty ranges from 5.1% in the district grouped under Ambala to over 18% in the Rewari group. He further specifies, Amresh Dubey, that the incidence of poverty in Kerala ranges from 4.4% in Trivandrum to about 30% in Kasaragod, which is in the northern Kerala, and the mean per capita total income ranges from rupees 411 in Kasaragod to rupees 856 in Trivandrum. So even in the case of Orissa, there is one district, Fullabani, where the average this income is rupees 195, whereas in Baleshwar it is 319. So all these incidents refers to, like Dubey in his EPW paper mentioned, that how some districts are more developed than other districts in the same state. There has been other data also which have been provided with regard to Karnataka and Maharashtra and Surya Narayana, and here referring to net district domestic product of various districts in Karnataka, Surya Narayana infers that the city of Bangalore alone enjoys a per capita income 4 times greater than those in the poorest districts of Karnataka. He referred especially to Bidar as a poor district where the per capita income is quite low in comparison to city like Bangalore. In fact, Bangalore accounts for 29% of the state income. In case of Maharashtra, Washim, with a per capita income of rupees 20,774, is the poorest district, whereas Mumbai, the richest district of Maharashtra, has a per capita income of rupees 65,361. So it's almost 3 times of the income of Washim. So this way, Surya Narayana indicates that 4 districts in Maharashtra, Mumbai, Thane, Pune and Nashik, the forming the Golden Triangle, they account for about 50% of the net state domestic product, while the other half is shared by the remaining 31 districts. The disparities within regions are an important cause of political tension, popular movement, and also at times violent and or militant activities. In 2000, 3 new states, namely Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Uttaranchal, were carved out. Now Uttaranchal is called Uttarakhand. These states' demands were on the basis of the demand for, these demands were basically economic demand. It was not linguistic but socio-economic political demands. Narayana Dutt Tiwari, while speaking on Uttar Pradesh Reorganization Bill 2000 in Lok Sabha, had said that earlier new states were created on the basis of language, but today this bill, the bill for the reorganization of Uttar Pradesh and the carving out Uttarakhand, this bill had been introduced in the House after it was passed 4 times by the Uttar Pradesh Legislative Assembly. This hilly region was earlier a domain of Gorkhas, Chandas and Pawar dynasty. I am quoting Narayana Dutt Tiwari. So basically Narayana Dutt Tiwari referred in his quotation that because this region was under the princely rulers, and then after that it came under the British rule, and then it became part of Uttar Pradesh. So it has not been, the hilly region of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand did not really get much assistance, and so the demand for a new state arose because of the economic neglect of the region. So to quote him, "When I came to know that there was no other way for the development of this hilly area, I raised the demand for a new state. Today, this hilly area has potential of becoming the center of electronics, herbal industry, information technology, software and hardware. Herbs and medicinal plants can be grown there to boost export. Fruits can also be grown. The power generation in this state will be so much that will fulfill the requirement of even Uttar Pradesh. Therefore, we should create this state by rising above all the differences. So Tiwari's speech is very clear that the demand for Uttaranchal or the Uttarakhand was basically an economic demand. It was not a demand based on language or culture. It was more kind of a political and economic neglect, and it was a demand which was based on basically demand for greater development and greater autonomy to the sub-region. One can also refer to Telangana. As we all know, Telangana has now become a reality, but in Telangana also, if you go by the history, the Telangana region was a part of the princely states of Hyderabad, which was ruled by Nizam, and Nizam refused to merge with India after independence, and there was a police action, and Nizam rule was quite exploitative of the local people. The Marathi-speaking region of the state was merged with Bombay after the merger of Hyderabad to India, independent India, and the Marathi-speaking state region became part of Bombay. Kannada-speaking region became part of Mysore. Telangana was merged with Andhra state in 1956, though there was some resentment, and as you know, after quite a long history of struggle, now Telangana has become a constituent state. But when it was part of, in this module we talk about Telangana when it was part of Andhra Pradesh. So when Telangana region was part of Telangana Pradesh, and when there was Andhra Pradesh, and when there was a demand for autonomy, Telangana region was offered certain safeguards. It was known as Gentleman's Agreement 1956, including establishment of regional council, reservation in public service employment and educational institution. In 1969, when the term of the agreement was about to come to an end, a movement for separate state erupted. The movement lasted for the entire year. 369 people lost their life in the police firing. And since then, there was always a constant demand for the formation of separate state of Telangana on the economic and this thing. And finally, as we know, that Telangana has been created after long history of struggle. Gorkhaland is another area where there has been a demand for separate statehood, and Gorkhaland demand has not been fulfilled. This territory of Darjeeling, which belonged to Sikkim and Bhutan, it is now called the area which came under the British occupation in the 19th century. At that time, Lepchas formed the ethnic majority. Since 1850s, Nepali people began to migrate to the region in large numbers as plantation laborers and for recruitment in the British Army. The waves of massive migration from Nepal soon outnumbered Lepchas. After the independence of India, a number of demand for autonomy of the region began to emerge. The initial emphasis of the autonomy demand was the recognition of Nepali language in the 8th schedule of the constitution and grant of the autonomous status of the Darjeeling within the state of West Bengal. It culminated gradually in the demand for separate state of Gorkhaland. 1980s witnessed armed confrontation on this issue. In 1988, the autonomous Darjeeling Gorkha Hill Council, the first of this kind in India, was formed within the state of West Bengal. In 2011, an elected autonomous body was constituted, the Gorkha Territorial Administration (GTA), with 45 elected and 5 nominated members. And this GTA was created to administer the 3 hill subdivisions of Darjeeling, Kalimpong, and Kursong. The GTA had full control over tourism, agriculture, public health, appointment of Group B, C, and D employee, and so on. However, the Gorkhaland issue has not been resolved. Vidarbha is another area where there has been a long demand for separate statehood on the grounds of the backwardness and underdevelopment, because Vidarbha has been the place where there has been mass-scale farmer suicide, the frequent cases of drought, and Vidarbha in comparison to coastal Maharashtra is considered quite underdeveloped. These movements are directed towards the formation of separate states, whether it's a Vidarbha or it is Gorkha land, or you can refer to Bodo land. So all these areas, Bundelkhand is another region from where the demand is coming up. So we have like Mithilanchal, Saurashtra, Kurd, Purvanchal, Harit Pradesh, Bundelkhand, Bhojpur, Kuch Bihar. So there are demands and demands. Of course, Telangana demand has been fulfilled. Then we refer to also another dimension of the sub-regional differences, sub-regional disparity and the dissension, and that is with regard to the problems of the linguistic minorities. You know, there are so many linguistic minorities, and India has been reorganized on linguistic grounds in 1956 on the basis of the report of the State Reorganization Commission. However, no state can be linguistically homogeneous. So even after the reorganization within the states, we have the minorities who speak different language. So according to 2001 census, there are 234 mother tongues and 122 languages in India, with the speaker strength of 10,000 and above. So 122 languages we have, and out of which only 22 languages are included in the 8th schedule. So there are 100 languages which are still not included in the 8th schedule, and every linguistic community has been demanding that its language should be included in the 8th schedule. So basically this has been a demand, and total 49 languages are grouped under Hindi in the 2000 census report. So there the Indian Constitution has guaranteed fundamental rights for the protection of the interest of the linguistic minorities. Article 29 can be referred in this context, and it's not only the minority language but also a script and the culture of the minorities which have been guaranteed constitutionally. Article 30 also allows for linguistic minorities to establish and administer educational institutions and prohibit the state from discriminating against any minority educational institution. Article 350 also says that every state should provide adequate facility for instruction in the mother tongue or the primary stage. This is Article 350A. So then we have the National Commissioner for Linguistic Minorities under Article 350B. So in spite of all these provisions, constitutional safeguards, the linguistic minorities continue to face a number of problems which are very well reported in the report of the Commissioner for Linguistic Minorities. When the National Commission for Religious and Linguistic Minorities, chaired by the Justice Rannath Mishra, which submitted its report in 2007, visited various states, linguistic minorities across the states raised following concerns. A. Inadequate facilities for promoting minority language in the state. Vacancy in the schools of the minority language teachers. Lack of residential schools teaching in the language of the minority community. The absence of translators and also lack of government program, lack of books in the minority language, and need for inclusion of some minority languages in the 8th schedule. So basically this module is about, as we saw, this module was about the processes of integration and disintegration taking place at the sub-regional level. So in this module, we tried to look beyond the state and we tried to look for sub-regional units. So as we found that in every state, we have sub-regions, and so on the one hand you have a state level identity, a state level social formation and all, but within the states we also have sub-regions which have been historically constituted, which are culturally well defined. And in this module, we, while referring to several case studies like the demand for Uttarakhand and all those, we saw that after the creation of Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, and then most recently after the creation of Telangana, there are many sub-regions within India from where the demand for new states are coming up. Why these demands are coming up? In this module we discuss them. We discussed that how the nature, political economy of development which has taken shape in India, which has led to the regional imbalances, that some areas have developed more than other areas, that has created a sense of deprivation and sense of alienation. That is why most of the demands which are coming up for the creation of a new state, and also the rise of the dialect communities, like demanding the recognition of their dialect as a full-fledged language in the 8th schedule, and also the creation of a new state. All these factors, like whether it's a demand for the recognition of a dialect as a language, or the demand for the creation of a smaller state, new state, or demand for autonomy, demand for autonomous council, all these demands should be seen in the context of rising regional, sub-regional sense of disquiet, or the kind of challenge to the federal polity. Because when India started its journey as a federal parliamentary system, there was always this seductive promise that all the sub-regions and the regions within India would be developed. But unfortunately, this has not developed. This has not happened. We have not only got the rich state, poor state syndrome, we have also got the rich sub-region, poor sub-region syndrome. So even in those states which have done economically relatively much better than other states like Maharashtra, you have the demand for Vidarbha. Why this has happened? Because some areas, and in this module we showed with the help of the per capita income and the kind of a developmental index, we saw that within the same state, one district would be having more per capita income than the other sub-regions. Invariably, the capital region would be much more developed in comparison to a remote region in the same state, or those sub-regions which are on the coastal line have a better transportation capacity, or have a better minerals, or a nearness to the market, or have a better kind of human capital. Invariably, these sub-regions are attracting much more investment, and as a result, they have done economically much better than other sub-regions. Likewise, you have this rural-urban divide also. The urban sub-regions, urban areas, those sub-regions which have more cities or the towns, they are economically doing much better than the sub-regions which are in the rural zone. So that is also the rural-urban divide, the coastal sub-region and the hinterland sub-region. All these kind of divides are coming up, and basically, unfortunately, under the new economic policies, when India has adopted this market economy model and the central state has withdrawn from economic policy making and economic regulation, now this is becoming much more prominent, and the demands are coming up again and again. So diversities are there, but other factors, as we discuss in this module, other factors like the lack of economic development or lack of political representation, these factors are also playing very important role in the rise of sub-regionalism, or they are putting a kind of a challenge to the national integration. In a way, no, they are not really causing a kind of, I would say, the threat to the national territorial unity or integration, but certainly the rise of sub-regionalism and regionalism that probably put the regionalism or sub-regionalism ahead of nationalism. So now the privileging the sub-regional identity or regional identity is becoming a matter of concern in today's India.